One of the more dubious bits of my CV is the fact that I used to have responsibility for soft porn at the Oxford Street Waterstones. That's what paid for the first year of my PhD. And I got really interested in just like weird, bad stories that people wrote that was kind of rip-offs of other stories. And also interested in the ways that people treated books. One of the really wonderful things about being a bookseller is you get to watch people being crap with books, or the people who just spend their lunch breaks coming into Waterstones and sniffing books, and then putting it down and going away. Or like, actually, as a bookseller, you develop quite a ridiculous relationship with books. We used to make Dan Brown Jenga, remember the board? And then I was a journalist for a bit when I quit academia, and as a journalist I just wanted clickbait, really. I'm very cynical in my journalism, and I knew if I wrote a bit about the history of fan fiction I'd get a lot of clicks and my boss would be happy, so that is actually what this is. It isn't the product of a peer-reviewed paper, it is something I wrote when I was a journalist, just being a bit cynical. But it's something I'm really interested in. I'm going to talk about fan fiction. I should say I'm not a writer of fan fiction or even much of a reader. I'm just really interested in them, and I say this with a lot of love. I think I'm not saying I'm not a fan fiction writer because they're weird and icky. That's not what I'm saying. It's just not something I do, and I think I should be honest about that. But I do think that fan fiction writers and readers are really interesting, and this kind of slightly academic, slightly ex-bookseller thing of being interested in how people treat stories. I've kind of sort of continued that with just watching people do fan fiction. So alternative titles include Why Pride and Prejudice with Zombies is Kind of Old Hat, or Towards a Marxist Analysis of 50 Shades of Grey, or Feelings I Had After Watching X-Men Apocalypse, or this was something that occurred to me while I was researching this talk, Why I Really Don't Want to Know If IKEA Slash is a Thing. If you don't know what slash is, we'll explain later, and you can have that traumatic image in your head. So feelings I had while watching X-Men Apocalypse at the weekend involved, they're kind of flirting, those two, they're really, other than they're kind of pretty. Look at the yearning! And the other thing that's interesting about that is that the actors who play this clearly have a good friendship, but they kind of play on the flirting friendship thing as part of how they promote it. So you get a lot of this. You even get little things here. So it says we can actually get married now in America as well. So that's really good. Isn't that great? And in Iceland. Oh no, Ireland. You probably get married in Iceland too. They're continuing how the actors who played the same role in other films kind of did similar things. So this is more another gift. I wasn't the only person to think they're flirting. Lots of people think they're flirting, and some of them think, oh, they're flirting. And they really like thinking that, and they really like thinking it so much that they write about it, and then they share it with their friends. And they're not the only people who do this. There are people who write often erotic fiction about characters in films, or books, or TV shows, or real people sometimes, bands, politicians. And there's a bit of taxonomy here I should just outline. The word fan fiction is when you write fiction about these sort of things. If it's erotic and it's about two men that maybe in the book or the film or whatever are seen as heterosexual, then it's officially slash fiction. If it's women, then it's fanfic. If it's heterosexual, but still erotic fan fiction, it's called het. But one of the things that interests me about fan fiction communities is they're not very good at colouring in the line, inside the lines. They really like to push the boundaries. And although they're a community of people who often can be quite into those categories, I think one of the things that makes them interesting is they always push them so much. And you basically any TV show or film, big market film or big market book that you can think of probably has fan fiction. In fact, anything that you can think of probably has fan fiction. When I was moderating blog post comments in an old thing that I used to do, I came across climate skeptic fan fiction, which was slightly racist and had a very complicated plot about very interesting fantasies about Guardian staff and a very interesting plot about George Monbiot having a crush on James Delingpole. Several years since I read that, it still burned deeply in my soul. I told a friend about this and they were like, I'm going to outwit you with that. They sent me a copy of a bit of fanfic that they found, which was Boris Johnson / the TARDIS. Another friend tried to freak me out and sent me this recently, which is an erotic short story about... It's part of a 4-part series and I'll let you Google for yourself to find out what the other 3 parts are about. Shout out to the people who've made an absolute fucking fortune writing dinosaur porn. And this dude. There is someone out there whose hobby is writing fan fiction about British politicians and dinosaurs. And this isn't a reference to like Jeremy Corbyn being old. This person has been at this for bloody years. It's their hobby. They write about like Nick Clegg and a velociraptor in the toilets in a plane, or like George Osborne funking off PMQs with a T-Rex, and then they send it to journalists. I really want to know who this person is. It's just the weirdest hobby. It's so funny. Now, some people would think of fanfiction as very new and being a product of the internet. It's not. The slash in slash fiction comes from this pairing of Spock / Kirk. The slash is sort of the slash. It's not an internet slash. Again, it's something that people sometimes think. It's a slash just to denote the difference between the 2 people in the pairing. And there was a lot of this slash fiction that was shared with magazines, fanzines, during the original Star Trek series. I think that one of the reasons that it has arguably bloomed in the last few decades is the internet, but also the modern ways in which we kind of have commercialised storytelling. So things like TV shows that keep you going with the will they, won't they kind of storyline, like Mulder and Scully or Rachel and Ross or something. And so you're kind of watching this and you're a bit frustrated. You don't want Mulder and Scully necessarily to get it on. That would kind of be it would kind of ruin it. You don't necessarily want that, but at the same time you might like to imagine them getting it on, and then you write it and you share it, and then there's like just whole chunks of the internet devoted to Mulder and Scully having sex. Massive amounts of it. Anyway, we'll have more about that in a minute. So that's one of the things that I think pushes it. Also, the kind of cliffhanger at the end of episodes, you have to wait ages. Books are fucking awful on this because they can make you wait bloody years before the next one. And that's there's many reasons why there's lots of Harry Potter fanfic, some of which is quite dodgy. Right? The Harry Potter fanfics is a complicated area. But anyway, some of it's lovely. Anyway, Harry Potter fanfic. In the early noughties, if any of you can remember back then, you had to wait ages for the next book, and you'd be like, I liked your universe, it was fun, I wanted to hang there in this whole big fancy place you made, I was comfortable there, it's safe, we had cool butterbeer things, and you'd be like, you don't want to wait for the next book, and so you and your mates could get together and just like play at it for a bit, and then you could wait for the next book, and you might be annoyed because she'd taken it in a totally different direction from you. I think there's also ways in which it's a reaction to our frustrations with sort of media, so this is a particularly good example, like, Star Trek broke a lot of like conventions, particularly on race. It really pushed Americans to think about things they wouldn't always be otherwise thinking about, but they were straight. They were straight. And so this was an opportunity for people to write things that were to queer those narratives at times when our mainstream media wasn't open to those sorts of stories. Sometimes people think about, this wasn't the first fan fiction though. If we go back, we also already had, it's so nice that we started this with a talk about people rewriting Shakespeare, because arguably we can say that was a kind of fan fiction, complete with their slightly like bad relationship with the thing that they're sort of taking it from. But something that people often cite as kind of early fan fiction is the fan community around Jane Austen. They were known as the Janeites, and this is from 1913 and is sometimes discussed as the kind of first fan fiction published. There was also a lot of communities around Sherlock Holmes in the 1920s in London and New York, and they published a magazine, the Baker Street Journal, which we might think of as today as a form of kind of fanzine, and that included fiction. But I think, we could take it back to, we could talk about the Shakespeare stuff. We could say it's human nature to retell stories. We could talk about Bible stories and Nancy stories, ancient Greek myths. We could put it in a kind of larger context and say this is just like something that humans do. But I think we're missing kind of the detail and some of the wonderful thing that's interesting about modern fan fiction when we do that. So I think I'd rather take the definition that looks at like modern fan fiction really starting around the internet with some predecessors in Star Trek and maybe the Janeites and certainly Sherlock Holmes. Because one of the things you really get when you start getting people talking with all their fanzines and then later on the internet is you get a sense of community. And that's what makes fan fiction so interesting, is it's this group of people working together to write text. You see people moving stuff together. So this is why I've mixed West Wing and X-Files, both set in DC. So it's understandable that a fan of X-Files might transfer that to fan fiction in West Wing, and you imagine Donna and Mulder getting it on. And when they do that, what they'll bring is they'll bring all sorts of stories and tropes from X-Files and combine them with West Wing. And they're taking things that have been written by all the people who wrote X-Files with them, but they're also taking all the stuff that was written by the fan fiction community. So they're not just moving aliens into the West Wing. They're moving all the things that the fan fiction communities that worked out how aliens have sex, that they created themselves in that community, and making it like something that Donna's doing in like with President Bartlett or something. Again, you see that with like Doctor Who and Buffy. You know, you just see these different combinations. Probably with the weird Boris Johnson TARDIS thing too, but I don't think we should dwell on that too much. And this is one that where it gets us to the most interesting bit and where we do the Marxist analysis of 50 Shades of Grey, because it explains for us how we get from Twilight to 50 Shades of Grey. For those of you who have been living under a rock and don't know, 50 Shades of Grey is Twilight fan fiction. That's where it came from. And one of the things that's controversial about fan fiction is people go, oh, they stole the original content and ideas from the original author. So like E.L. James, who wrote 50 Shades of Grey, has like managed to make £37 million off all the stuff that was basically the idea of Stephanie Meyer. But no, she didn't just do that. She took the content that had been developed in fan fiction communities. So when writers, big writers, are like, I don't like you people writing fan fiction, it's like you're destroying my copyright, I think they can fuck off. But I can understand why people who wrote and read and shared and commented on E.L. James's stuff when they were part of large communities of writers working together and co-writing and co-creating tropes and the whole kind of complicated thing that takes you from Twilight to 50 Shades of Grey, which is quite a jump. They took her through that, and they haven't got any of that £37 million. And so, you know, from a Marxist analysis, it's a bit one of those crap bourgeois revolutions where you know, death of the author, but still got a crap leader after all. Now, it raises all sorts of interesting things about like creativity in terms of the individual and the community, and you know, where we go from death of the author stuff, and how much the original author always wrote in the community anyway, and really do individuals ever do anything of their own back? I'm not going to answer any of that. I have a nice picture of Michael Fassbender.